Mic test. You're all
Hello.
audible?
Yeah.
Does it work? Everyone can hear us? Perfect. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Really excited to be here with you, with these esteemed panelists. And I also see that there's many industry experts and sustainability professionals here in the room. So we hope that we are not preaching you things that you already know. But I guess we all know there's this real urgency to drive the circular economy, and this is really the topic for today. And to put it a little bit into a perspective, also looking at the representatives that we have here, for example, if we are manufacturing a new laptop, then we are looking at about 331 kilograms of CO2 emissions. A new bicycle, you might know better, is between 168 to 290 kilograms. And if we are choosing something that's refurbished, we can actually reduce that carbon emissions by up to 85%, whilst at the same time saving money. So obviously, these environmental and financial benefits are really, really huge. But there's one problem, which is that consumer skepticism that exists that doesn't make secondhand mainstream. So typically consumers have concerns about hygiene, about quality, about value, and that holds them back for giving something pre-loved or refurbished a try. So what we want to discuss today is really how can businesses build trust, shift mindsets, and accelerate that adoption to make it easier for consumers to uncover these benefits of pre-loved. So let's right away dive in, and my first question is for you, Harry. You have over 20 years of experience in technology and e-commerce sales, and so you have a lot of experience in this space. And over a year ago, you stepped into the role of being the CEO of Reebelo. And I would like to hear from you, what is the business model that you have, and how is this different perhaps from other traditional resellers of refurbished electronics?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you, Ping Ping, Carolin, for having me on the session. So Reebelo, if you haven't heard of it, our mission is to be the world's largest go-to marketplace for sustainable consumption. So what does that mean if I unpack it? Today, the company is about 4.5 years old, about to turn 5, and just started during the pandemic. So if you want to think about it like that, started in Singapore, headquartered now in the US. Just recently, we moved our headquarters from Singapore to the US. And the mission is to, kind of become a platform, 100% marketplace, so we don't carry any inventory, we don't have any warehouses, we don't have any trucks to deliver products, but we're just a platform where sellers, authorized sellers or certified sellers can come and list products. The products we have today on the platform range in many categories. We have consumer electronics like smartphones, like laptops, tablets, smartwatches, right from your iPhone 11 or 12 all the way through iPhone 15. We don't carry 16 because it's still new. But also, refurbished MacBooks and so on and so forth. But we've also got many other categories on the platform, from fashion products, so you can buy used Levi's, or you can buy used Lululemon products, Nikes and others coming soon. We have baby products as well. So over the first 3 years, the company started with consumer electronics, but our mission is to be kind of the platform for all sustainable consumption. So we've slowly started adding new categories around the various marketplaces we have in 6 countries. So that's what we do in a nutshell. What you buy will be something that is tested. We have a 70-point checklist, where all our sellers have to abide by to ensure quality, to ensure reliability, durability. If you're buying a refurbished phone, for example, the battery life has to be 80% and above, in some cases 90% and above, depending on the price point. And we don't carry, or we don't have any sellers on the platform which have fakes or which have high return rates, because that's not a good customer experience. So because of this, we gate the platform. So if you think of, again, I used to work in Lazada, so I kind of can give you an example. If you compare Lazada and Shopee as marketplaces today, they mainly focus on brand new products, but they also allow any seller to come and sell on the platform. We are different because we don't have all the sellers coming and selling, because refurbished products are not new. So we really want to ensure high quality. And so sellers with lower quality products, we just don't want on the platform because it results in high returns, low NPS, and ultimately, not a profitable business model for us or for the seller. So we curate the kind of products, we curate the merchants on the platform, but all the products you do get are legitimate, they're sourced effectively, and they're providing the best experience, and they're 70% cheaper than buying new. So I think when you combine all of that, that's in a nutshell what we do.
Right. So what I'm hearing again is really that convenience that you have, that quality being checked, that is really, because these are is addressing exactly the concerns that consumers have, and now even that you're building on your portfolio of items that people could be buying secondhand. So Nat, we just heard from you a wonderful presentation about what Decathlon is doing, and I think most of you guys have been listening already about that. Maybe you can share just a little bit more on the Second Life program that you mentioned briefly as well. How did it start, and what is the impact that you have been creating so far with this program?
So as you know by now, the Second Life program comes from a problem of waste. And what was very interesting was, how do we get this program out, And it started with a clear integration of the second-hand business in our merchandising. That means that actually if you want to buy your first-hand goggles, next to it you should have a Second Life goggles. And this was extremely difficult to start with. And the second one was, how do we put these products online? Because every product was unique, every defect was different, and we didn't have this process to do it online. So these were the two main levers moving towards an omni-channel business, where your products were already visible to an online customer so they could buy it offline. And for the pure offline customers, how can they gain awareness of these products? So instead of setting up a Second Life boutique, it's really a clear integration of allowing the customer to choose between a new product and a second-hand product side by side. And then they can compare. Is it good? Is there any defects? Is it worth the price point? Does it still retain the good benefits that I can use for sport? So this was how it really kicked off.
Great. Yes, I think user experience is very important in this aspect as well, in making it very convenient. And perhaps even in your case, then it's a good comparison. If I can see the quality of a second-hand product is still as good after so many times of use, then I'm more confident in buying that quality as well, right? I think you guys do a lot of good things, and I think the fact that your businesses are growing is a positive trend. At the same time, we are still not at mass market adoption, and I think one of the main reasons is really that consumer skepticism and really sometimes the behavioral side of things, where consumers are just not ready to give it a try. I mean, maybe you look at yourself, how many of you are wearing currently secondhand clothes, right? And then what are the reasons why you're not doing it? So maybe from your perspective, from your experience, what are some of the key challenges that you see on the consumer side? And how, maybe we start with you, Hari, how is Reebelo really trying to address them to convert more people into becoming secondhand consumers?
Yeah, I think the beauty of what we're trying to build is also, riding on to the momentum that's out there in the world. I mean, you look at the news every day, you kind of see the impact of carbon emissions, and you quantified how much carbon emissions are, kind of given out when you make a laptop or a bike. And because of all of that, you can kind of see the, detrimental impact to the planet, from forest fires to cyclones and, all of the natural disasters. So I don't think we need to educate people on the climate change, which is here already. I think we need to figure out how we can take action in whatever small way, we can. And I think the biggest, misconception people have, is that something is of inferior quality, it doesn't work well, I'll have to return it. And I think the more we can address that through education, through using content on our platform or on social media. We believe in kind of a 3Cs approach: content, community, and commerce. So we create engaging content for our fans on Instagram or TikTok, especially to target the Gen Z and millennial consumers, right, who are very, I'd say, caring about things like changing climate or climate change. And when we create this content, this community that we are targeting, engages with that content, and they start to feel a sense of social responsibility. And that leads to commerce, which is a transaction on a platform like ours or on Carousell or anywhere else which is promoting second life products or Decathlon. And I think we're all, Decathlon, us, Carousell, whoever is out there, even the Amazons and eBays of the world are getting into second life products simply because it would be irresponsible not to. It's still probably a small portion of an Amazon's or eBay's product lineup and SKU catalog, but for us it's 100% of what we do. It's our core competence. And once people get along the mental barrier, and the best way is also to try, buy it once, you see. We have a score, for example, on our website on Trustpilot of 4.7 on 5. So you can see the high level of customer satisfaction. A third of our customers come back within 12 months to buy something else. So those are all ways to educate customers that you are buying something not only of high quality, but also much more affordable. We're also seeing another kind of macroeconomic shift here. When you look at, again, the economy hasn't been super awesome in any part of the world for the last 3 or 4 years. This also helps people tighten their purses in terms of finding something for much cheaper. So if you can get an iPhone 13 or 14 for $400, when a new one costs almost $2,000, I think many people would take that. This is basically the journey we're on. We're building a company, we're creating awareness, we're using content, we're engaging younger communities. By that I mean Gen Z and millennials, which is our core audience, and hopefully to drive more transactions. And we're happy to continue to have very high double-digit transactions year on year on our platform, just with this, I would say, basic level of education.
Great, that's really great. Yes, I think engaging customers is that big question. How do we do that? What is good strategies? Maybe, Ned, for Decathlon, do you have any good examples? For example, also for your recycling, you also do recycling program and the second life program. What have you been done to giving the consumers that kind of touch and feel approach that maybe helps them to just get started for the first time? Because I think we all agree, once you already tried it out and you see it's convincing on all aspects in terms of convenience, in terms of price point, in terms of quality, then you are more likely to continue, right? So for me, I started once, I don't know, almost 10 years back to have a first second-hand clothes, and now my whole wardrobe is only pre-loved, and I would not even think of going to a conventional store because I know it, I'm convinced, right? But how do you get people over that initial hurdle, and what strategies have you been trying and testing that you could recommend for others as well?
What I did in 2022, because I'm not an expert, so I need some insights. And what I did was, in a small room like this, I invited my best customers, some experts in the room, and my CEO. And I proposed them, okay, this is what we want to do for buyback, this is what we want to do for second life, this is what we want to do for repair, at this price, at this service, open book. And I said, challenge me. Okay, I did it with the Matcha Initiative team. I said, challenge us, because we don't want to provide something which, and we don't want to waste time building something which is not useful for you. So that's the very first thing I did, actually. And they challenged me a lot. Today, the pricing of what you get back for a voucher for a bicycle is challenged by the customers who are actually doing it. This first-hand experience, almost, you cannot pay for it, because this is like live feedback from your customer to you. And this was what we did. The second thing we did was to target the parents, because parents have kids, and we know that the circular business is completely in line with the journey of a kid. So we said, let's have a target focus group on kids' bikes, not just bikes, kids' bikes with parents. Which means when a parent wants to buy a first-hand bicycle, they should already know that 1 year's time they can sell back their bicycle. And this will give them added advantage or added levers to want to even buy the first-hand bicycle. because they know that there is an opportunity when my kid grows too big, when there is not enough space in my garage, when my kid honestly doesn't use the bike as often as he's supposed to, that there is this formal avenue, an incentivized avenue where I can come back to Decathlon to do it. So educating right from the get-go is super crucial, but also in the right way where I involve the customers. And for me, these were, I would say, two big changes that were made in adopting these practices.
Great. I think good examples also how you really try to understand the user's perspective and the user journey in this, so that it becomes even more convenient than the conventional choice, right? I think we are still living in a world where the reason why we are finding circular economy hard because it means that extra step, that extra thing that has to be done. But the more we change our experiences to make it easier, then it's just more compelling.
Yeah, and we industrialize the way we do that now. So actually, everybody who is involved in the circular economy, every quarter we send a message to say, feedback to me about your price, quality, training, availability, and then we make the changes as we go. So every quarter we are making new changes.
Yeah.
And that's the evolution that we made from this big group table to a more digitalized way of collecting info.
Great. Maybe let's touch on policies and regulations as well. Maybe starting with you, Harry, what do you think, what role can policies and regulation have to make your life a little bit easier?
Yeah, I think, it's, I really like the Singapore government's Ministry of Sustainability and Environment, MSC, I guess chaired by Minister Grace Fu. She really does a good job in terms of promoting a campaign called Go Green SG. I think it's a start. We partnered with the MSC last year to be one of the vendors, what they call vendors, to encourage a sustainable way of life. And I think if you look at Singapore vis-a-vis US or Canada or Australia, New Zealand, I still think there's a lot of work to be done. You would look at these quote-unquote more Western economies or even in Europe, for example, and you will see that sustainability is a way of life. From the way they segregate their trash every day to recycling at home. And I think that still there is a bit of ways to go in Singapore, right from housing estates to condominiums, etc. Because if you think of your own way, there are not that many avenues to start this at home. So I think the government is taking this very seriously. I think they are putting in place kind of awareness on, even though we live in a little island like Singapore where we don't, touch wood, face all these natural disasters yet. I think it's a matter of when, not if. So I think the government, as usual, is already starting to think about ways to create an awareness and also action plan to get citizens on board. Similar to what they do in becoming more healthy, etc., etc. I think sustainability and a way of life at the policy level, at the government level, by MSC, by also there's another organization called SEC within that. Is a great way for these for the government to champion sustainability as a way of life. Again, we look at other economies for inspiration. I think there'll be a lot more progress at the household level to recycle, to reduce, to reuse. Already the kind of things we see at charging for plastic bags. I mean, all of that is already happening. But I think there's more we can do to be more conscious, starting with everyday living at home, and then buying a recycled piece of fabric. There's many pieces of clothing today that don't have to be used, but it can be made with 75% recycled fabric, for example. So that's a good way to start. If you, as a customer, don't want to go and buy a used T-shirt, you can still say, hey, let me buy something with 75% organic cotton or 75% recycled fiber. That's a good kind of via media because it still reduces the amount of cotton that's used. There's more than 1,000 liters of water used to make 1 kilo of cotton. So again, fast fashion and things like that, many of you may not like to hear it, is really bad for the planet, what the Sheins of the world are doing. But we've got to start somewhere, and we've got to start pushing this mandate of buying something which is sourced more responsibly, even if it's not completely used.
Great. So maybe talking about policies and regulations, and Decathlon being originally from Europe, from France, are there any maybe policies that coming out of Europe that you think they are helping driving that change over there that we could actually bring to Asia as well, or that would really help us locally here in the region as well?
Yeah, I think it's coming. In Europe, you have something called EPR, Extended Packaging Responsibility, where the polluter pays. Decathlon, France, and France being a very committed member in the European Union, for the first time, we have to prepare, to pay huge amounts of money because of these schemes. So there you have the stick, but the very interesting thing about this scheme is we also have the carrot. So you have something called eco-modulation. And what does it mean is that actually if you create more repairable products that are assembled and disassembled, if you make, for example, spare parts easier, more accessible, and quicker for customers to fix, and if you increase what we call the repairability index of items, you also get some benefits. So this forces a way for us to change the way we design things, but also the full value chain of how we ensure that the repairability of products are really sustained, and also the collection back of our products of recycling and remaking or upcycling or repurposing different solutions for the products that we collect back are done in a very industrialized manner. And that's the challenge we face today, because in industrialization, that becomes a huge cost. And so we have to industrialize at the right time so that we can continue to provide these avenues for customers to recycle, for spare parts to be closer to customers, and for us to design differently. And so that's the balance that we are facing thanks to this EPR and eco-modulation regulation.
Let me also add one more plug. I think the Ministry of Education also in Singapore is doing a great job with teachers talking about the 3 R's, reduce, recycle, repurpose in school. My kids come home and talk to me about it. In fact, they are the ones who influenced me to take this job some years back. But because they care about the environment. And I think it starts at the education level, it starts in schools, and I think our schools are doing a great job with, again, creating that mindset from young.
Yes, I agree. I think the awareness piece is a big pillar, and then also I think where regulations and policies can help is really with that either carrot or stick to help maybe not only on the consumer level but also on the business level to have enough incentives internally to go through these changes. And I think we have heard in the presentation of Nat earlier, going through these changes, there's a lot of hurdles, a lot of obstacles, and you need to be almost a bit crazy to say, I want to do it nonetheless, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to transform my business models in order to make it work, because ultimately still you have to have your ROI and you have to make it work financially as well. Actually, I would be also happy to open up a bit for some questions in the room. So if you have any questions ready, maybe to think of some questions, we have like a one more for you prepared from me, so that you can think of what you want to ask the panelists. So a quick one maybe on my side. How do you see the future? Like what are the kind of trends that you see are happening that actually have an impact on the future of your business, and what you're seeing, what is the trend, or if you had a magic wand, or you have basically you have some requests on what need to change to really further drive the circular economy from where we are right now. Who wants to start?
You wanna?
What is quite interesting is that 1/3 of the overall growth of Decathlon is coming from circular business model. So we come to a point where we say, okay, we need to industrialize if we want to continue this momentum and grow. And in order to do so, when we look at the European market especially, we see that a large chunk of the $1 billion that I spoke about just now is coming from the e-bike category. The difference between Decathlon and other companies is other companies just want to grow fast but not profitable. And Decathlon, we want to grow fast and profitable. So we have to strike a real balance, and when we see some product categories which are growing very fast, we need to take the right approach. So we are investing, acquiring, or working with some companies on how do we fix e-bikes, how do we certify them to be ready to sell, and so that we can take a small share of the market. So that's one of the future trends in order to continue the momentum. So that's one element we are making on. But the second one is, I think we have only scratched the surface of how do we work with C2C companies and as well B2B, because these are huge markets. We are traditionally very B2C, and we see that if we can crack the shell for B2C and B2B markets, we can provide a lot more value for our customers with regards to circularity, and we can continue to scale this model. But it's a tough nut to crack.
Certainly.
I think good points. Just to add on, I would say that today less than 5% penetration of all the products that are sold in retail and online globally are made from some kind of a sustainable source. And I look back to my e-commerce days. I was at Amazon and Lazada over the last 15 years. And at that time, e-commerce was also less than 5% of total retail. And in some countries today, e-commerce is 50% of retail. And so I'm very encouraged, right? So similar to e-commerce as an industry, sustainable e-commerce or online, e-commerce selling sustainable products, also starting in its infancy, but will no doubt continue to grow and explode just like e-commerce for the last 10 years. People are already comfortable buying online, thanks to the Lazadas and Shoppees having done a lot of education, the Alibabas. And I would say that this is the next wave. And like anything else, like other technological changes, like the disruption that's happened in the payment space, in online commerce, in security and privacy and all of that, this will just continue to rise and rise. I think it'll not take 10 years to get to 40 or 50%. I think with every seismic shift, it tends to get faster, simply because the call to action, especially on saving the environment, is here and now. It's not, we can't wait for 10 years. E-commerce, just traditional e-commerce, there was no hurry to get it done fast. But I think to buy responsibly and to change the way we live, it needs to happen now. So I think that acceleration should probably happen in the next 3 to 5 years, which I'm looking forward to see.
Great. That's really good to end on this kind of hopeful note as well, because I think we all need to, we need to hear that sometimes everything sounds so dire, but actually things are moving and things are moving fast, and there's more people involved in this change than we might think. Maybe, yes?
I have a question. So, Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year recently, I was doing a spring cleaning. I found that we have multiple technology gadgets at home, from the tablets to the laptops, and then also some sports equipment. So now I'm wearing my consumer hat, and I would like to ask, are there any incentives? How can you incentivize consumers like Carousell to actually participate in this repair, refurbishment, products? I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, I think Lunar New Year is a great time in your spring cleaning. And it's Year of the Snake also, right? To shed all the unwanted stuff in some ways. So we at Reebelo, we have a trade-in program. So you can, if you have got a used smartphone or an old one which is lying collecting dust in your cabinet, you can trade that in for cash. So it's very simple. There's a button on the top, on the right of the website called Sell Your Device. You click on it. There are certain categories which are accepted. More will be added over time. And you literally get a valuation on the spot. They say this is worth up to X. So let's say this is an iPhone 14. You probably get $700-800 for it, depending on the condition. So you've got to go and self-declare the condition. Is it cracked? Is it, you'll be given a kind of forensic diagnostic report. You've got to fill. It takes literally less than 30 seconds to do. And then they'll say, okay, this is your potential valuation. Then someone will come to your door. You don't even have to go out. You can also go to a shop if you want to. But someone will come to your door and they will touch and feel it. They will power it on. They will go and check whether what you've said is actually true on the condition. And if it matches, they will give you the price quoted. If there is a significant difference, they will mark you down a little bit, right? So that's then a negotiation on the spot. But the intent is to take the device by that person and then for you to get some money on the spot. And on top of that, we say, okay, now that you've traded in your device, the extra incentive on top of you getting cash is $20 to buy something refurbished on the platform. So then that comes as an email, as a voucher for you to go back to the platform. So yes, the color green is good even on the financial side when you get some dollars. But for us, it's more that this device will then go into an ecosystem, get refurbished, all the parts that need to be changed, get changed. and then it gets listed back on a platform like ours or Carousell for someone to go and buy again. So I think that way everyone in the ecosystem makes some money. We get a commission from the seller or the buyer. It's totally free for you, of course. And then the seller makes some money because they sell it at a slightly higher price after the refurbishment. That's the insight.
Right.
I'll pass the mic to Vandana first.
Yeah, I'm just curious because yours is completely like in a way, a C2C marketplace. Is there
B2C. It's B2C.
B2C.
Carousell is more C2C.
More C2C? Okay.
This is
So, but
B2C,
how can your company or somebody else go into like businesses that use computers, that use all these different devices, from printers to all sorts of things? I think a lot of waste comes at a company level as well. A lot of people, like companies, especially if they are not the owners of the company. So it's really like the purchasers just buying, you put a ticket in, a new device comes and that gets taken away, right? So from a corporate point of view, what would be some ways in which companies can actually come on board and use platforms?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, as Nat was saying, I think we are predominantly doing B2C today. B2B is a very exciting space, right? So for us to go and do outreaches to schools, to large corporations who have several headcount in the region is the next wave. I think we've had some initial success with schools, with universities, who all want to try within their departments to not have new laptops for employees or new phones, but actually refurbished products. This is just at the start, I would say. That's a whole new wave to unlock. And I think there's a lot of potential there. Because you're absolutely right. I don't think, like I myself in Reebelo, I don't use a new laptop. I use something refurbished. But it works exactly. It's like a 2020 MacBook, right? Just a 2020 MacBook. Works as good as new. It does all my tasks. I have no issues with it. So I think the more people get to understand this, even at the corporate level, that also is another way to educate someone to then say, okay, let me do this for my home, for my kids, right? The other one is to target, as he was saying, the parents of the kids. So, or let's say our domestic helpers. Every time, I have friends who all want to buy something for their kids or for their helpers. They'll say, why do I need to buy something new? I'll say, yeah, this is a great opportunity for you to buy something more affordable, because your kid probably has an iPad, probably drops it, right? Spills something on it. It's gone, right? So there's no need to continue to buy new stuff for certain types of usage. And I think the more we have those use cases in mind and cater for that, it's an amazing way. We actually have a B2B portal. It's not as advertised as our B2C, where companies can log in and go and make certain transactions in bulk. So not in the tens of thousands yet, but I'd say in the few hundreds. Yeah.
There was another question here. Yes.
Is it okay to ask a quick question? I was intrigued, Harry, by your comment earlier on that your kids convinced you to take this job after years with Amazon and Lazada. And I think everyone on the panel are parents. I think you've all mentioned it. What role do you think children have in changing the behavior of adults with regards to sustainability? Because in marketing, we talk a lot about pester power in certain channels. And I just wonder if you feel that kids have quite a large role to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking, I'll give you the story in 30 seconds, what happened. So we were in a zoo. I was taking my kids on daddy-daughter's day out. And in the zoo, there was this exhibit about the gorillas in the Congo going extinct, simply because of the huge amount of deforestation that's taking place. Why is deforestation taking place? It is actually to find rare elements and tin to put in smartphones like the iPhone, right? And so the way they did this exhibit in the zoo was very simple for kids to understand, right? And then the kids then had a small little area where they could go and play, and then they could go and see when you chop down a tree, the habitat of the gorillas disappeared, and that's how the gorillas were going extinct. So in literally 15 minutes, they got the message that things like this are bad for gorillas, right? And obviously, the kids love gorillas and animals and so on. And then they asked me, at that time I was in another organization, not Lazada or Amazon. I was in an organization called One Championship, which is martial arts, right, like UFC. And they said, hey, you've spent number of years there. Why don't you come and do something that actually changes the planet and something which i.e. the kid, would be proud of, right, that their dad is doing. So that's what they said to me. And then I said, okay, it's probably time to make them proud a little bit and figure out what the next calling is. So that's all they had to say. That was the little exercise we did. And because it was done in that moment and the messaging was so on point, I felt it's about time to make change. So I absolutely feel because of the involvement parents have in kids' lives and because of the connection and that bond, sometimes we see things very differently than them, and sometimes it's the simplest things, sometimes which that they say can really make an impact. And for me, it did. I think they can really have an impact.
Yes, the lady.
Hi, I'm Julie from Climate UX, and I'm so excited about this panel. Thank you, guys. This was really interesting. I love, Carolin, how you were talking about the importance of bringing people into this process and making sure the user experience is great in sustainability. One thing that struck me a lot in food has been how AI has been able to help reduce waste and help us offer a new technology, a new opportunity for it. So I'm curious to know from your perspectives about the circular economy, how can AI help or hinder our work in that space?
I'll let him talk a little bit.
Tough question. In my mind, circular economy is a hardware business, not software business, in my mind. Because, yes, AI can help you, but at the end of the day, you need space, parts, skills, and channels to sell. So we are very far from AI in Decathlon, extremely far. Where there could be a very strong element of maybe using blockchain technology different from AI is on traceability. How the product was made, when it was made, what is the extent, what is the life cycle of it, and informing companies when they are about to reach the end of life cycle. This, for me, we need to unlock, but it starts with having a QR code on every product. Starts with this, because there is no way you can trace. So in Decathlon, we have started some initiatives around our shoes, QR codes on shoes for traceability. But we are very far from AI, so I cannot answer you that question. But this is the reality. And I haven't found a lot of companies who are successfully integrating AI for circular business when it comes to really hardware products,
Yeah.
I haven't found many.
No, I think AI is, it's an overused term these days. But I think there's a lot of good, right? The world is still in its nascency to figure out what this technology can do for us. Obviously, the FANG companies are doing quite a bit with it. For us, I think very simply, how we use it is we use it to improve our customer service. We also use it to rapidly accelerate catalog creation. So in the past, we used to have a team in Malaysia, for example, building the catalog. So we've got a few million SKUs on the platform today. But initially, all of that was kind of being done by hand with a number of employees. I think now it is how can you rapidly go and scrape different images, text descriptions, all of that. So as we see more and more, so less than 5% of the products today sold are sustainably sourced. As those go up to 30, 40, 50%, which is my wish, you will need to get those products live on platforms like ours much faster. And I think that is one use case that is here and now. We can use it without needing the time taken to get the first million and the first 2 million going. So I think that's kind of where we see it. But I think, who knows? Our minds could be blown by amazing use cases that come up in the next 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, 2 years. But I think AI is obviously here to stay, more than just being a buzzword. And there'll be more use cases. I think customer service and things like automation are the immediate low-hanging fruit for small startups like ours. But obviously, the Metas and the Googles of the world will figure out other ones and find ways to monetize that as well.
Thank you. So I think we have one more time for one more question. If there's any questions in the room. Okay.
Yeah, great panel. My name is Toby. I'm with a company called Unravel Carbon. Love to understand, both you guys work across the region, Southeast Asia, APAC. Love to understand the differences and what you're seeing, the differences in either attitudes, maturity, or behaviors, just specifically around circular economy in the different markets. Maybe around Southeast Asia, so that there's kind of a common thread there. But love to hear that and where we are in Singapore, I guess, compared to some of the other markets.
Yeah. This was a topic which we
We actually
about.
discussed it, yes, previously, but we didn't get the time. It's good that you're bringing this up because I think it's a very relevant question as well, looking not only from the Singapore perspective, but more from a regional perspective as well. Yeah.
The question that was posed to me was, do you only buy back or trade in Decathlon products? And I said, yes in Singapore, but no in Australia, for several reasons. The first one is on the maturity of the market. In order to scale the second-hand market, you probably would have to have pushed out a decent amount of volume in the market of Decathlon products. And for example, in Singapore and Australia, we are, I would say, very high awareness in Singapore and very, very low awareness in the whole of Australia, only in Sydney or Melbourne. So circular economy works extremely differently because over there they want to acquire and grow fast. And they want to attract new customers. And that's why they increase the policy to say, we buy back any brands, as long as you have the capacity to fix it. Because that's their intention, that's their goal. For us, we have quite an established number of customers here in Singapore. And our goal is, we want them to come back into our ecosystem to increase the CLV. So actually, the user behavior is defined by how we create the circular business. Not about whether this market has better sentiments about sustainability or not. It's what I'm seeing in Vietnam, in Philippines, in Thailand. Each has its local difference on how they view sustainability. But what is most important is when building the circular economy, how convenient it is, what is the level of maturity in the market, and what is your main intention. And circular economy, as I shared, has many different intentions. So that intention is projected into a business model, which is then reflected into how the customers view circular economy for Decathlon. Yeah.
I had a slightly different perspective. For us, the supply is not something we push out as an own channel. We have sellers in the ecosystem which work on supply, right? So we don't have any inventory to sell, so we pass through the inventory from sellers to the customer. So we work with a multitude of sellers, and we also trade in products that are sold that customers can buy wherever they've sourced it from. What we are seeing is, we tend to see Australia and New Zealand at the head of the pack in this region in terms of awareness, in terms of actually considering doing something about it and actually transacting. To give you a sense, our GMV in Australia is about 30 times or 40 times the size of the GMV in Singapore. Not for anything else, I think for us, because number one is, and then I'll talk about Southeast Asia in a little bit, but in the PPP or the GDP per capita in Singapore is quite similar to ANZ. I'll give you an example. New Zealand is a country. I gave you Australia as an example. Australia is not a fair comparison because higher population. New Zealand has 5 million people, very similar GDP per capita. It's about $50-something thousand a year. And Singapore is exactly the same demographics. Our GMV in New Zealand is 4 times that of Singapore. So just to give you a sense, I actually feel that when you have everything, all else being equal, and you have products which are predominantly consumer electronics being sold, again, which are mass products like the iPhone and laptops, etc. The conscious awareness for people to do something more responsible increases. And I think if you also go and travel to these countries, you will see, again, right at the household level, there is proper recycling of trash, there is composting, there is all of that, right? And so that's kind of what I talked earlier in terms of policy. We don't have yet that in Singapore at the household level. And when you have a lot of that ingrained in your culture for 25, 30, 50 years, it makes a difference. And so that's kind of the closest example. I can say Singapore and New Zealand. But when you look at Southeast Asia, for us, we haven't been too successful, quite honestly. We had a marketplace in Malaysia, which we shut down. We also had a marketplace in Korea, which we shut down before my time. But I think the thesis was we were still a bit too early for this, the rest of the region. And I can hypothesize again, because in consumer electronics as well, a product like an iPhone is what you see, or an Apple products that tend to do well in consumer electronics when you think about refurbishment. Why? Because Apple products are high quality and they have great parts, and they generally last for 2 or 3 cycles of refurbishment. But actually, the majority of smartphones, if you just look at smartphones as a category being sold in Southeast Asia, are Android phones. Look at Indonesia, look at Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines. Your Samsungs, your Xiaomi's, and those are $100 to $150 phones. I know this because when I was in Lazada, we were selling tons of these smartphones. It was all $100 phones. $100 phones don't do really well when you recycle them or you refurbish them. So the customer confidence in buying these phones also plummets, right? Because there's no industry, there's no supply actually. There's only a bunch of sellers selling higher quality Macs and Apple products because they last longer. But also, the reason is the affordability factor as well, right? If you look at, there are 100 million phones sold in Southeast Asia, forget Singapore, just in Southeast Asia. There are 600 million people in the region, 100 million being sold in Southeast Asia every year. 85–90% of them are Android phones, cheap Android phones. So the market is not that big for, again, specifically consumer electronics and business we are in, simply because people can't afford to even pay the $400 to buy a refurbished iPhone. So the biggest, actually, Google mentioned this, CEO Sundar Pichai mentioned this some time ago, the biggest competition for Android is actually a refurbished iPhone. Because people still want this Apple logo at the back of their phones, it's a tradition, it's a status symbol and so on. And many people in Southeast Asia are trying to get their first iPhone, and companies like us will make it more accessible, but for the average person, it's still out of reach, simply because GDP per capita in Indonesia, maybe $8,000 or $9,000 a year. Same in Vietnam, in Philippines. Somehow in Vietnam, a lot of people have iPhones, but they spend a lot of their household income on phones and TVs, which is also an interesting stat. But for the rest of the region, where there's majority of the population, where we don't control the supply, unlike them, but they control the supply as well. It's a bit of a different game. So, different perspective. Yeah.
I have a question for can you share with us what it's doing in terms of circularity, whether fraction of product?
Yeah, it's the beginning of the value chain. So we have what we call the eco-design approach, which I didn't share earlier. The idea was to create products which last longer. So ability to be assembled and disassembled. This is the first thing. And we want to increase our repairable range from, I think, 8 to 15%. The second thing was to increase the recyclable material in our sourcing, so that we can comply with what we call the EPR. When we recollect them, how do we recycle them for new components? So that's the second thing we're doing, and that's also defined as eco-design, so recyclable, last longer. And the third one is to create products with lower emission compared to its predecessor, either through renewable energy, new technologies, less water sourcing, so on and so forth. So we are also decarbonizing the value chain where these products are produced. So these are the three things which I didn't speak about, but they fall under really the eco-design approach. And today, a good 60% of our total business is done through these eco-design products. Yeah. So.
Just a quick follow-up. In terms of that, do you think that if more products are designed correctly from the beginning, would your platforms or your initiatives or in the future want to be able to do something to give such product advantage in terms of the resale market? Would it be possible to do that?
Yeah, why not? Because I shared about EPR, but also shared about eco-modulation, and we received some benefits from creating these kind of products. So Decathlon's point is to, when we receive some benefit, pass these benefits to the customer so they can continue to enjoy these products. And of course, it's our dream to push our range to be have a higher eco-design approach. So thanks to these kind of benefits, by all means, we want to pass this down to our consumers, or use that investment to change our value chain even more, which means maybe industrializing in circular business, as an example.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add to that, again, using an example of a smartphone, Apple, for example, is making it more difficult with every iteration of the iPhone to open it up and for people to get in and change the battery, or because they're soldering things, sometimes it's glued together. And we obviously want to ensure that it's kind of an open network for any seller who's credible, who has a certain qualification and follows the checklist, to go in and change that and then sell it back. Apple is kind of creating a closed ecosystem simply because they want to do it themselves. So part of this is kind of the open versus closed, right? To really make this, I would say, proliferate in the market, it's like open source, right? You need to make it as accessible as possible. The more difficult you make it to open this thing up and because same with AirPods and all the Apple products, actually, it's getting harder and harder for third parties to go in and tinker with it, which is actually detrimental if you want refurbished products to be in the hands of the most number of people, because when Apple also touches something, it will cost a lot more. And that also, to my point on affordability earlier, it doesn't get into the hands of customers who actually want them. So actually enabling a third-party ecosystem to tinker with the product as easily as possible is actually the best way, right, from when the product is designed in the factories to ultimately, if they're really thinking about the planet, this is where it should go. You should make it more open versus more closed.
I think we are running out of time, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
thank
really
you so
good
much.
discussion.
Thanks so much for the great discussion from the audience, and thanks so much panelists and moderators for your
Thank
help.
you.